Hey everybody, we are building with Blocks. Blocks is a free 3D modeling program in VR by Google. And we're looking at how to use these tools to make cool 3D objects. And today we're going to look at tool number 2, the stroke tool. Now, the stroke tool is actually the closest thing Blocks has to a regular paintbrush. We can do freehand painting in 3D using this stroke tool. Now, like our shapes tool, this stroke tool uses our thumb trigger, or your joystick or pad, to change between settings on your tool. Just like the shape tool, moving our thumb trigger up and down will make our tool bigger or smaller. Smaller, bigger. Just like the shape tool, if I move this trigger left and right, it changes between different shapes. So here I've now got a pentagon. If I start moving to the right, I add more sides to this shape. Now I'm up to an octagon, 8 sides, 9 sides, 10 sides. Moving it the other direction, I go back down to a hexagon, pentagon, square, triangle. Triangle is small as you can get. You cannot do a flat line. Since we're 3D, we're not painting. Every shape we paint must have a full shape to it. So when I hold down the trigger to paint, I've got a triangular tube moving through space. It must keep that shape. So 3 sides is the smallest. Let's get up close here. 3 sides is the smallest. 4 sides. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 sides is the most we can get, a decagon. Then when I click and drag, I have a 10-sided tube that I'm painting with. Now, for people who are used to tilt brush, this would be all one stroke. In Blocks, it does make it up of separate pieces. So you can see as I undo, it's taking a piece at a time. Or if I do a long drawing and then use the eraser tool, see how the whole thing highlights? Yes, the eraser tool will remove the whole line at once. But if I draw it and then undo does it piece at a time. So the stroke tool is for drawing lines as opposed to making solid shapes with a shape tool. Now, same as before, if I hold down the trigger when I start drawing, it does limit what the tool can do. With no trigger over here, I can paint however I want, paint nice and wild. Undo several pieces. If I paint holding the trigger down, watch this. When I hold the trigger, I'm going to start moving on this plane. And while the trigger is down, it is resistant. You can see how it sort of snaps. It's trying to hold the plane even though I'm moving my hand up and down. It's not changing the line up and down. It's frozen. Let me erase this whole thing. This one was long enough, even the eraser tool is taking out in pieces. Erase. So these line tools, these stroke tools, if you make it long enough, it will automatically break this into pieces. Especially when you undo. Left and right changes the number of sides all the way down to a triangle. And holding the trigger down while you paint keeps you flat on a plane. So even if I now move up and down, you can see the line does not move up and down. It's still drawing more, but it's staying on that level. If I then add the grid to what I'm painting with the trigger, now we can even see in the grid that level I'm sticking to. It does take some practice to get the lines and the angles you want, or after you've drawn it, we can use the grab tool to move the pieces around. With a grid, again, we're stuck to the grid. Without the grid, we can now move it however we want. And now I'm going to rearrange that piece over here. We'll rearrange this piece up here. You can see how, unlike Tilt Brush, a long line can be broken into many different pieces. With a grid on, it limits how we can move these. It must line up to the grid. These stroke pieces. With a grid on, when we paint stroke, you can see how it's trying to snap. Holding the trigger really makes it snap to alignment. Eraser tool will get large segments, but not necessarily the whole piece at once. So this is using the stroke tool and the way it works within blocks. Now, don't forget that you can also change your own personal relative size to the world. So with the stroke tool, I can do things like add components. So I'm going to go to a sphere, and I'm going to paint a very large sphere. And now with the stroke tool, let's go to a almost round stroke. And I can do things like teapot. So these 3D tools, now I'm going to grab all of this together. This teapot is now something we can use as an object, and you can see from any angle. The stroke tool made the handle and the spout a very nice, round, fully 3D object. In this case, if we look closely at the spout, you can see how it's a little wobbly. Here's a case where holding down the trigger or using the grid would help control, keep it in a plane a little bit less wobbly. So depending on the style you're trying to create, the pieces you're trying to do, there we go. So the whole point of this stroke tool is so that we can add these non-standard shapes to our pieces with a certain amount of control. So now we'll make this very small. We'll make this part big so we can now start doing simple lines and embellishments around. Remembering this is a stroke, not paint, so it is a full 3D modeled object using that many. Now with the stroke tool, you can get close to a line. You'll notice I've been painting it in the direction of the shape. So the painting at you, I paint towards you so we can see that shape to it. Or if I paint to the side, I've been rotating my brush to the side. If you do actually keep it edge on and paint it edge on, you can see how it is almost a flat plane. I'm now going to grab it so you can see it's almost a flat piece. So anyone who's done calligraphy, a flat nib, if you move it against the nib, it's a wide stroke. But if you move it in the same direction as the nib, it's a very narrow stroke. So our stroke tool does not necessarily have to be a big round tube. We can use the stroke tool to make it as a flat ribbon as well. And then use that ribbon for nice surface textures, that type of thing. Do bear in mind that this will be rendered as an object, as dimension. So if I do export this for a program like Blender or Unity, it won't be a texture. It will be another object mesh actually on top of this object. So these stroke tools are indeed making full mesh objects. Whoops, wrong one. Layered onto, work with me, I want the little guy. Let's make you a lot bigger. There we go. There we go. Sometimes changing your scale helps you get the trigger pointed to exactly the right thing. There we go. Back to normal size. Reset. Where'd my teapot go? It's behind me. Okay. So the stroke tool, drawing non-standard shapes in 3D. Same controls as the shape for size and different types of shapes. But now we're painting freehand or on a controlled level. Stroke tool for blocks by Google. These strokes are usually one piece, but if you make them very long, it will automatically get broken into several pieces. But with these, we can not only add embellishments, but we can make entirely free scripted objects on their own. So this is building with blocks, using our free tool from Google to actually make 3D rendered objects. So you can see, depending like calligraphy, how I hold my brush, subscribe, it does affect the shape that I'm drawing here. Okay. Building with blocks. Thanks for joining us for this episode. Hopefully this will give you a little more control with the pieces you make. Check out the other videos concerning how we use the other tools to make 3D objects that we can then export, save, and use in other 3D programs. Have fun building with blocks. Let me know what sort of stuff you do in the comments. Let us know if you have other questions. We do this every week here at youtube.com/shamelessmayhem and live on twitch.tv/shamelessmayhem. Thanks for joining us.